Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Before we kick off, we're just going to give people, we can see that there's a lot of people joining right now. We're just going to give everybody 120 seconds, 2 minutes to join. We know what it's like moving from meeting to meeting, and then we'll get started if that's okay with everybody. Just a little housekeeping. If anybody would like to ask questions, during the webinar today, there's panels on your right-hand side, well, on my right-hand side of the screen. It might be slightly different on yours. Please feel free to pop your questions in there, and we'll try and answer as many of them as we can as we do this webinar today. Those that we're not able to get to, we will take offline, and we will look to follow up to answer those questions for all the delegates and attendees for today's session. So we are 1 minute in. We'll just give another 60 seconds, and then we will kick off, if that's okay with everybody. Excellent. Okay. We're just giving everybody a 2 minutes from the countdown for joining. For those of you that have just joined, as mentioned, if you'd like to leave any Q&A while we're waiting, if you want to post, anything that's of interest to you in relation to Agentic AI in the Q&A, please do so in the correct panel on the right-hand side. So we're going to kick off. We're 2 minutes past. I'm sure we'll have some more people join throughout it, and we will record this and make it accessible to people. But I think it's best that we get through it as we have a lot to cover today. So welcome to you all, first of all. Today's webinar is entitled How the Efficient Agentic AI Killed the Expensive Process Automation Star, which is a bit of a mouthful. But we hope it will be an informative and beneficial for all of you who are attending today. Those of you that don't know me, I'm Stuart Reeder. I'm hosting and facilitating this session. Some of you may know me from various contexts and things that we've done previously. Others may not. So I'm the head of insurance here at Hitachi Digital Services. I've been with Hitachi for just under 8 years now. And I've been working in insurance transformation for about 30 years. I'm joined today by a number of my colleagues. Big thanks to Chloe and Santosh in particular for help setting this up and getting everything organized, and Shelby, etc. But I'm also joined by James Wake, our head of banking and finance, and Vito Dominguez, who is our lead solutions architect within our technical solutions office. And you'll hear more from them as we go through. Additionally, we're delighted to be joined by Varun Baraya, head of growth and partnerships at Illumini, which is a key partner of ours globally in the Agentic AI space. And last, and by no means least, we have Jake Landsberg, who is the VP of Operations at Newfront, who will be providing client testimonials of using Agentic AI. For those of you unacquainted with Newfront, they're an insurance brokerage for the 21st century that has disrupted the market in terms of engagement and interaction through intelligent use of technology. You'll be hearing more, and they'll give a better introduction, I'm sure, as we bring them on online. We look forward to hearing from all of our speakers today, but we would like this to be interactive, so please do post your questions in the Q&A box within your screen. What we're going to cover today is why robotic process automation, RPA, didn't deliver on some of the promises and the value expected, and why Agentic AI is different, and how it is delivering tangible cost savings and other benefits to organizations, particularly in financial services and insurance. Then we will go on and hear from Varun and Illumini and see Agentic AI in action and how it's delivering consistent results with minimal supervision and how it differs from RPA. Then we will hear from a real-world example from Jake, as mentioned, on how Agentic AI is reducing inefficiency in insurance. We will ask questions of each of our speakers as we go through. But we will have a dedicated section after we've heard from our speakers for additional Q&A before closing the meeting. And we look forward to hearing from all of you listening today on what your questions and concerns are in relation to Agentic AI. So that's me for now. I'm going to hand it over to Vitor, who's going to go to the first item on our agenda, why process automation didn't deliver and how Agentic AI is different. Over to you, Vitor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I hope that you can see me and you can hear me. I think I control the slides. I just noticed that now. So I think we are on the agenda. So I'm going to go on this one. Well, let me introduce you. Let me introduce myself. So I'm Vitor Domingos, lead solution architect, as Stuart mentioned, working at Technology and Solutions Office in EMEA. And today I'm going to discuss about RPA. Why we think it failed, and how we came up with to today's 2025 with agentic AI, and what is the kind of the possibilities that moving forward into this new world brings us. So it's explaining why RPA is struggling, in our opinion, why agentic AI is going to be different, and what is agentic AI, and how business can embrace this shift to gain a major advantage into going to this brave new world. We think that this year is quite a turning point in terms of agentic AI. A couple of months ago, we heard from Microsoft CEO talking about software as a service. Paul will end, and everything is going to be an agent. So we're very excited to work on that direction and help everyone achieve that goal of having their own agent, or moving from their current software as a service platform or even RPA into agentic AI. So if this works properly. Right, so RPA, robotic process automation. There is a lot of good stuff that RPA brings to the table, obviously. Some of you might be using RPA for a while now. Some of you might consider going into RPA. Again, that's totally fine if we were kind of in 2010, not in 2025 probably. But bottom line is, for some organization, for some type of business, it's really interesting to move into that if you're not into RPA. But when we compare RPA to current capabilities that the market and we also provide to our customers, there's a lot of limitation that RPA still has, and agentic AI, and now we'll explain what agentic AI is in a minute, brings to the table. We believe that our RPA kind of lacks in terms of adaptability, because it brings a lot of rules, and when something changes, the bots or the system might break. It requires constant maintenance because, again, that system might break, or it's limited to the rules that you set up in the beginning to do some sort of automation between the systems and applications that organizations have. And this will bring an increasing operational cost, but also on the IT systems as a workload. And bottom line, at the end of the day, everyone that deals with RPA struggles with complexity, right? Because RPA is limited to predefined tasks or rules. It cannot handle more dynamic workflows that some organizations might have. So RPA was revolutionary for its time, for what it brought to the table, but because it's based on this rule, because it's rule-based and kind of cements itself within repetitive tasks, as business evolves, those limitations become more apparent, and that brings us to agentic AI, where this world, and we've been seeing this with large language models, with agents, with co-pilots and assistants. So the world moves forward. Obviously, it brings us more kind of dynamic, goal-driven approach to automation, and that's what organizations want at this moment, right? They don't want to rely on predefined rules. They want to make decisions in real time. They're more goal-oriented rather than just the outcome of itself, or the execution of those rigid steps that sometimes RPA brings. And with also agentic AI, or with agents, all of this system learns and adapts. We've seen that with large language models, with the GPTs and Claudes of this world, how the brilliance that all of these new tools bring to the table. And what we want at the end is reduce, obviously, human intervention when we apply all of these agents. And let me try to break you down for a couple of minutes here what means agentic AI. What is the underlying technology around that or without those components. So if you think about, you currently have ChatGPT or Claude bringing the organization, brings you all of this new efficiency and intelligence to the table. But do you want to automate that? Do you want to bring that intelligence to the current systems that you currently have? And that will bring some complexity, of course, but it will bring a lot of benefits, as I was mentioning. And all of that, if you bring the current structure of large language models, let's say, to the table, what you see is several different components within an agentic system, different agents, they're going to do several tasks for you. With the agentic AI system, some of them kind of handles the part of the memory, retain the experience, something that the agent has been doing, and tries to learn and adapt if something changes. When compared to the RPA, that doesn't change, it's a strict rule of a set of rules. But also brings a lot of different tools that can select the best way to execute a specific task or an API to execute that task. We don't need to tell, it just learns and adapts according to the tool that is available to the bot or to the agent at that specific moment. But the most key part here is it focuses on goals, because instead of executing just a task, it's more focused on the objective that it needs to achieve, how efficient that objective is going to be achieved. And all of that obviously belongs to the agentic AI system, which is the kind of the core intelligence. And then you have some components that you can add on top of that. As you can see there on the screen, if you try to use, for example, ChatGPT, you currently have tasks, which is a part of that agentic system. But if you think about that of, I want to query something, and that query through the system is going to go to an agent that is going to identify what I need to achieve. Then it goes to a system that understands and handles all of that complexity and decides what it needs to do. Can deliver tasks to a submitted agent, or can just deliver the answer to me, and that agent is going to filter that answer. So all of that is going to be fully automated. And I don't need to set up, again, a bunch of rules, a bunch of processes. It's more easy for organizations to work with these agents in the future. And right now, every organization has access to the same set of tools and same set of capabilities. And it's really exciting working right now in this brand new world. So going on to the kind of the next area, why is this kind of a big paradigm shift when we talk about RPA and agentic AI? I think, as you can see there on the table, I try to highlight some of the kind of features that usually RPA has, or people or organizations aim for that when they try to implement RPA. And then where we try to compare that against the agentic AI systems. So obviously, we're going to go through autonomy, the workflow automation, the adaptability of that. There's the data integration between both of them, and then obviously the pricing models that RPA and agentic systems usually have. Starting with that, as I mentioned in my in the previous slide, the agentic AI is more focused on the outcome or the usage, and not per license or per seat based when you compare both systems. One, RPA works usually in silos. The other one obviously tries to break all of that by using different parts of the bots or the agents to gather all of that information. One learns from what it needs to do. The other one needs to set or use a given set of rules, which is more kind of aimed to the task automation. The other one is more end-to-end automation. But bottom line, what we see here on kind of this table is, I think that the message you can understand where I'm coming from this, because we want to move organizations from the RPA process where it follows rules, but actually agentic AI follows those kind of objectives, where RPA executes the tasks, but agentic AI orchestrates the entire workflow for you and understands what it needs to do. And finally, move from the manual update of the RPA and move to a kind of a system that can improve itself over the time. That is kind of the goal when we move more from automation to more intelligent system, and where I think that organizations can be focused more on this competitive edge of using agentic AI in a more efficient, scalable, let's say, and cost-effectiveness way for them in the future. I just have one more slide. I hope I can be fast. And now I hope that you can understand why we're talking about why the Agentic AI killed the RPA star. It's unfortunately we still don't have the rights to have the soundtrack here. The radio killed the video star. Sorry, the video killed the radio star. That's it. But I'm just trying to compare all of the as a short resume what I've said over the past 2 slides. The comparison between RPA and Agentic AI, because what we're trying to achieve here is bring all of that intelligence into the table, not just full automation. And that's the kind of the key point here. It's not focusing on the rigid process that RPA usually has, which is good for some organizations, but requires human intervention. But bring the agentic system, which adapts to your current needs, that can understand what you're trying to achieve, but also kind of eliminates all of that maintenance overhead and optimizes itself for any kind of decision process that it needs to do. So you don't need to put a lot of effort into that. It's more intelligence to understand what it needs to achieve, how it needs to do things within your own organization. And I think that if we try to boil it down, the future is actually moving from more kind of the automated part of the things that we were doing in the past to have more autonomous systems that are going to do this for us. Obviously, there's going to be a learning path like it was with RPA. Everyone needed to understand how this could be implemented into organizations, but actually focusing more now on the Agentic AI would be more interesting. End to end, how is this going to impact? How do we see this impacting the organizations, CEOs, CTOs that are actually trying to figure out if this is going to be right for them to implement at this moment? Are you okay there, Stuart? So bottom line, just to bring you some numbers that we've seen already. If you're a CTO or a CIO or someone that is thinking of going into Agentic AI, everyone thinks about what is going to be the ROI of this. I'm going to spend more because I already implemented RPA. Now I need to do the same thing with Agentic AI. What we've seen is when you compare one versus the other one, we've seen a lot of productivity gains because you're going to have full workflow automation rather than just, again, focus on a given set of rules. There's going to be high between 30 to 50% in terms of cost savings because we're going to eliminate all of that RPA maintenance that usually organizations have when they need to do some changes within their own current process. And because Agentic AI will understand that change, you're gonna we're gonna save some money there when you're trying to do this shift to Agentic AI. And bottom line, I think that if you compare the ROI to RPA, I think it's quite bigger that when you implement this within your own organization, because Agentic AI will learn and improve over time. It's not a fixed system that is just going to work for you in terms of that implementation that you did. I'd like to bring some of the. I think we're going to have some questions, but for the speakers, maybe we can start with that. But bottom line, if you are a CEO, CTO, a director that's trying to implement this, I think there are some key key questions that you need to ask yourself when you move into this, right? Or if RPA is going to be actually really a good option for you, or should you continue with that or move to Agentic AI?
Sorry to interject. If one question that has come up that might be useful about what you've just said, and then we'll just move on to the next speaker, if that's okay. Obviously, a number of organizations, particularly in financial services, have started messing with Gen AI, particularly in terms of customer engagement and journeys, etc. One of the things that has come up time and time again is how do you address the black box problem with some AI models, particularly with Agentic AI now that it's making critical decisions about processing things in the back office. How does Agentic AI differ in terms of explainability and building trust within the systems? Of financial services?
I think that, if we compare the ROI to RPA, I think it's quite bigger when you implement this within your organization, because Agentic AI will learn and improve over time. It's not a fixed system that is just going to work for you in terms of that implementation. Well, you can have Agentic AI with the full open source system. There are some large language models that are open source. Some of them are open weight, that you can change the output of that. I don't think that in the long term, we're going to have a truly open source large language model that we understand the data that it was trained. I think the industry is not focused on that. Everyone is focused on how can we change the weight of the answer of a large language model, which this is applicable to Agentic AI. But the responsible part, or responsible AI, the kind of the guardrails that we put on top of that, the full explainability, the reasoning behind it, that is going to be key. And right now we have the tools that it's possible to have access to all of that, to understand the reasoning behind what an agent did, to have that in an audit log that can be tracked, that can be traced. The big issue here is, do we need to understand how the large language model that is behind this Agentic AI was trained on a specific given set of data? I don't think the industry at this moment cares about that, cares more about what's going to be the answer, how the answer is going to be filtered, how it's going to be aligned to what we need to have. And within the Agentic AI system, those decisions, some of those decisions are going to be automatically made. We need to understand how those decisions were made and actually have a log of that. There are tools, there are ways to do that. Fortunately, Hitachi has a capability to deliver that within the responsible AI and guardrails. We understand that it's quite complex, but there are ways of having the full explainability of what an agent is doing within the system and why it made that decision.
Thank you, Vitor. We might touch on this as well, because I do see a couple of other questions coming through about explainability and compliance and risks. So thank you to Gareth and other people raising questions at the moment. I haven't been able to get through them all, but I think we'll move on to the next speaker, if that's okay, Vitor, and we'll come back to you in the Q&A session, if that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask Varun to come in. Varun, could you just introduce yourself briefly and Lumini, and then we will just show Lumini in action, and then talk a little bit more about Lumini specifically, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Stuart. Hi, everyone. I'm Varun Baraya. I lead the growth team at Lumini. We're a Silicon Valley-based technology company that helps organizations delegate their manual, repetitive work to machines through AI, and we'll obviously talk a little bit more about what that means and how we're sort of approaching that problem. And we're partners with Hitachi and serving a number of different sort of markets and geographies through that partnership.
We'll just play a little video of AI in action. Would you mind just kicking that off, Varun, if that's okay, and explain what's happening?
I can do the voiceover. Were you going to pull up the video?
Yes, I'll pull it up now.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you can all see that.
Great. So I'll walk through this, and the screen's going to move quickly, so don't worry about the details. But this is a financial reporting use case that we built for one of our customers, Dropbox, where they had analysts going and doing essentially this SEC filing process, where they had to go to the SEC website, they had to pull down certain financial reports, they had to extract a bunch of information from those financial reports, they had to put it into a spreadsheet, they had to do an analysis of that data, synthesize their findings, and send it out to a set of stakeholders. And this was a process they were doing repeatedly, week after week. And what you're seeing on the screen is the person actually doing this work on the left side of the screen, following a standard operating procedure, and then sort of completing the tasks on the right side of the screen. And so you see, ultimately, they're sort of generating an email that gets sent out with the appropriate data. So they came to us with this problem and said, what can you do to solve a problem like this? And so I'll show you what working with Lumini looks like. So this is our internal editor. A deployment strategist is going in and building the automation. And Stuart, I'll ask you to quickly pause here if possible. And what I'll show you here is the type of instructions or the type of input that Lumini needs is really plain language instruction. And I think the video dropped off.
For him, that may be me. When I try to put the pause, it minimizes it. So apologies.
Okay, no worries. We don't need to pause. We can run through it then.
Okay. Great. It's coming.
All right. Thank you.
Just for anyone that hasn't noticed, if you transfer from the media player on the right-hand side to the main screen, you'll be able to see it much better.
Sorry, a little bit of a recap here. But what I'll sort of talk through as sort of the Lumini portion of this demo comes up is the type of instruction you're providing Lumini is plain language instruction. This is something that any sort of non-technical person within an operations team can write up in terms of how they do their job. This is a training document. This is a standard operating procedure that exists in most organizations. And that is really the input to Lumini in order to build the automations. And once that comes up, I'll sort of walk you through the downstream steps that Lumini does to sort of translate that natural language into automation code that's ready to deploy. So as I mentioned, this is sort of the console where a deployment strategist on our end is building automations. And this is really a real-time example of how long it takes us to build these automations. So we would put in the natural language instructions here. When you hit compile, we translate this into a set of what we call action steps or business policies. And this is what a person would do to complete their task. We have a secrets manager, a way to capture credentials for any of the underlying systems that we need to access. It's all securely stored and isn't accessible to anyone on the team or anyone outside of the party entering the information. And once we have the credentials, what you're seeing here is the Lumini tool actually building these automations in real time. And so we're going step by step and completing the actions required to build out that automation in real time. And what you see on the left side of the screen here is essentially an auditability window where a deployment strategist is ensuring that the work being automated is being automated correctly. And we'll sort of run through all of these steps. It takes a couple of minutes for us to sort of build out this automation, and then the automation is ready to test prior to being deployed. And so you see it was sort of wrapping up the build of the automation here, generating the code required to send out the email at the end of the process here. And our automations can sort of be, once they're built, they can be triggered in a variety of different ways. Either it's sort of what we call server run automations, where they happen in the background. They can be API triggered, they can be time triggered. We can be assigned a work queue that we sort of work through. Or we can work in a sort of a co-pilot mode where as soon as a task shows up, an agent working that particular task can call a Lumini automation and it runs in the background on their behalf. And so I think hopefully that gives you a sense of how we build automations within Lumini, how we're able to go with very sort of high level natural language into automation code that's ready to deploy in a very short period of time.
Just for the benefit of the audience, because I know that flew through very quickly, a company's existing SOP documentation, that can be read in sort of natural language processing. So you don't have to go through a configuration panel. It just takes that information. So you're not having to recreate everything from scratch again. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. We start with whatever sort of assets exist within the organization. We're not trying to create additional work. And really our goal is sort of democratization of building automations by making it, again, something that can be written in plain language versus being a complex product requirement document that maybe only a technical person is able to generate.
Fantastic. And what are the other advantages of Lumini over, say, RPA, for example, or even other agentic AIs that you've seen in the market?
Yeah, as I think sort of, if I think about sort of that spectrum, so relative to traditional RPA, there are a bunch of sort of value propositions. The first is sort of starting with natural language versus technical product requirements documents allows us to work directly with operations teams that have the challenge and reduce the reliance on internal product engineering IT resources within our customer organizations. The second is time to value. Because we're using our models to build these automations, we're typically building and deploying these automations in a couple of weeks for our customers, and some of them have been as fast as a couple of hours. And so our customers are not spending multiple quarters developing automation before they're deployed, and they're realizing value really, really quickly. The third is the cost to automate. Again, because we're using our models to build these automations, you don't sort of have the high cost structure of engineering teams that traditional RPA would have. Now, as I think about sort of the agentic AI end of the spectrum, there are sort of a variety of benefits that Lumini brings to the table. The first is obviously the complexity of the work that we're able to take on sort of is much more complex as we move into sort of the agentic world versus the traditional RPA world. We're also able to maintain the resiliency and self-healing of our automations. And so if an automation breaks in any way, we're able to figure out why the automation is broke and essentially replace the code with updated code that allows the automation to continue to function. But I think the biggest difference between sort of Lumini's approach and a full agentic approach is agentic models are ultimately probabilistic technologies. And when you're sort of delegating mission critical work to probabilistic technologies, you introduce a risk that the model drifts and ultimately does something that is unintended. And so what Lumini does to solve that problem is we go from natural language to what we call a business policy. And the business policy is the set of guardrails that the AI will use in order to complete its work. And we're using the agent to create the business policy, and then we use an agent to go from business policy to automation code, rather than using the agent to complete the end task. And that allows us to ensure that when we're completing a mission critical task for our customers, whether it's the first time or the 100,000th task, we're always doing it the right way as defined by their business policy, versus introducing the risk of the model deviating over time.
Excellent, excellent. I have another question. Given that we are in a particular area of the hype cycle of Gen AI, to be frank, and everybody is trying to do lots of different things in Gen AI, and Gen AI is the answer to all the problems within financial services and insurance. I have to ask, what does Lumini not do, or agentic AI specifically, or more broadly, that our audience should be aware of? Because we're not in the business of trying to sell technology for technology's sake, and focus on the problems that derive real value now.
Right. I think one theme we've seen in the market is like you said, sort of throwing AI at every problem you see in your business. And what we sort of coach our customers through is there is still sort of a threshold, a barrier in terms of the impact to the organization that these solutions need to meet before you deploy and maintain them within the organization. And so we're always sort of coaching our customers through ensuring the task that we're looking to automate, or the process we're looking to automate, will drive a meaningful enough impact to that business so that it's a needle mover versus solving a very painful problem for one person in the organization because they don't like to do that monthly report that they have to send out that takes 3 hours, right? And so that's where I think it's taken a lot of coaching with our customers. The second thing that we try to shy away from is highly judgment-oriented tasks where the guardrails are just not clear. We've had examples where, for example, underwriting a mortgage, and when you talk to the underwriter about how they underwrite the mortgage, there's a bunch of data points they look at, which is deterministic, which we can absolutely consider. But then there's a lot of sort of tribal knowledge in terms of how that financial services organization thinks about underwriting mortgage policies that is very, very hard to codify. And in those tasks, we shy away from sort of these very highly subjective or highly judgment-oriented processes unless they can be reduced to a policy that can be consistently governed across the organization. Stuart, I can't hear you. You might be on mute.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a couple of other questions. Apologies, I was just reading through some of the questions being raised, and I think now would be the right time to raise them before we transition over to Jake, if that's okay, quite quickly. Firstly, we've had a question in relation to the video that you played on how important was the prompt engineering effort on the financial reporting capability that was demonstrated. Is that something you can talk to, or do you want to think about that and come back to that in the Q&A?
Yeah, maybe let's come back to the...
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we give Jake some time as well before the Q&A.
Fantastic. And actually, there's some really good questions here, so we'll come back to them in the Q&A. So please keep posting them, and we'll try and cover as many of them as possible. Thanks so much, Vern. We're going to hand over to Jake now, Jake Lansborough, VP of Operations at Newfront. Jake, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, introducing Newfront, and talk about your experiences using Gen AI or Agentic AI and Lumina. Thank you.
Of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Jake Lansborough, as mentioned, VP of Operations at Newfront Insurance. Newfront is a technology-first insurance brokerage. We are full-service retail insurance brokerage. We offer P&C, employee benefits, retirement services, as well as wholesale benefits to our customers across the United States. I've been involved with the company since we were quite small, early stages, and my job has always been around the people, the post-sale servicing and people and processes work within the organization. So everything after the producer brings in the business, how do we handle those customers? What is our service strategy? Who does what? And what's happened over time is there's been an evolution of saying, can we reduce costs by a variety of different strategies across our servicing? Initially, about 7 years ago when I started working with the company, our strategy was try to use labor arbitrage, offshoring processes to take pieces of work that had to get done and find the lowest cost option to get that done from a human standpoint. What's happened in the last couple of years is we've started to add a lot of automation to these processes, and in some cases replacing the need for these offshore processes completely. And that's where Lumina has been very critical and very helpful for our strategy. So I've been in touch with Lumina for actually a number of years prior to engaging and doing something. And what our use case today is as an insurance brokerage, we sit between our clients who need insurance and our carrier partners who are providing the insurance. And there's a lot of communication between those parties all the time. And we actually have to be the conduit and also the record keeper for a lot of that information. So we have to access these carrier websites every single day, look up documents that pertain to our customers, understand what they are, and get them over to our customers. We had a team of, I think, about 12 people in a variety of offshore from the US, a variety of countries across the world, who were accessing these sites for us every single day, pulling documents and getting them into our system. As we got to know Lumina and as we started to understand the service, this became a top priority to see if we could take better advantage of the service and reduce our costs and increase reliability. So we had a couple of problems. One, it was very expensive. Two, the quality was not always perfect in the sense that there would be a list of documents that needed to get downloaded from a specific carrier site. Someone would be going through and then maybe they would miss one, right? And then that has downstream consequences for our clients that were oftentimes unacceptable for us because it would jeopardize our relationship and sometimes cause us to lose a client if we missed that notification of that document. There was also just a reliability issue. The different countries accessing these websites all of the time caused login issues, things like that. So we then had a lot of internal overhead trying to make sure that these teams always had access to the websites. Lumini came in and we started to carrier by carrier bring in Lumini for this. And this was about a year and a half ago where when agentic AI was actually not part of our vocabulary at the time, and it was not something that we were really talking about. And so it was more RPA. And loving this webinar, and I actually want to challenge the title of it. I don't know that agentic AI killed the RPA. I think that agentic AI is actually supercharging RPA, because what we've seen is in just the last 6 months, a massive increase in reliability on the solutions that Lumini has built for us. So initially, it was more standard RPA, accessing carrier sites, doing this, and then if the website changed, if a button moved over a little bit, or if it wasn't in the same place as it was before, the documents weren't in the same place, the workflow would break, alarms would go off. Lumini, they were fantastic. They would jump in, they'd fix it, and we'd be back up and running within 24 hours. And that still caused a lot of stress. With agentic AI coming in, we haven't seen those issues in the last 5 to 6 months as it's becoming more reliable. And that's because of, I think Vitor mentioned, the goal-oriented outcome, right? The goal of the workflow is to access these documents and download them. The goal of the workflow is not to click in this coordinate of the screen and then click in that coordinate of the screen and then right-click and download. It was to access the documents. And that's what we've seen, a massive improvement in terms of the quality that agentic AI has been able to bring to the RPA solution. So what we've seen across the board, it seems like it's almost too good to be true. We've decreased our costs, we've increased our reliability of pulling this every day, and then we've actually increased the speed in which we can communicate these to customers. So lastly, another important one is the scope. So one of the other issues that we had is because we have such a wide array of carrier partners, certain carriers where we had fewer customers placed with those carriers, it wasn't worth us necessarily always building out the workflows for these human agents to go and look for them. So we would rely on our internal teams to say, hey, this doesn't meet our volume threshold, so please go ahead and access these sites yourself, pull those yourself. Now with Lumini, we've been able to increase our scope. So we go across a much wider array of carriers and increase the reliability. We don't have to worry about someone checking once a week. We can check every single day and communicate documents faster. The other thing is that it's also happening for us in the middle of our night. So it'll happen at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning for us. That way our team wakes up, they start seeing documents as soon as they log in and start their day. So we've seen a massive improvement of all of those things, which has been very welcome. And we're now starting to look to really take advantage of the agentic AI and the RPA flows at the next level. And so as Varun was mentioning, something, when it comes to mortgage underwriting, it's too complex. And we see the same thing, right? We're not really considering yet looking at client applications and then making market recommendations based on that. But what we are doing is taking the next step on this journey of, hey, we know that a number of documents that come from our partners every day fit this mold, right? They fit a audit notification, a cancellation notification, a non-payment, an invoice, something like that. And we're starting to now work with Lumini to say, let's look at these documents and let's come up with a process to put the human in the loop to allow these processes to move faster, right? So today we have, for example, a cancellation notice that comes from the carrier because a customer might have missed a payment. We have to have a person look at that, go and check the carrier website, see if they've maybe made the payment, then go out to, and if they haven't, then go out to the customer, and it's a very manual process. Lumini, we're starting to work with them in terms of understanding what's the content of those documents, going back, checking the website, making sure that payment is there, and then actually handling the notification to the customer for us as well. So and again, it's all goal-oriented. We don't have to say, in this PDF document, look on this side of the screen and see if there's a date there. We can provide more generalized instructions, and then the agentic AI generally gets it right. For those things, we're also keeping human in the loop there. So we have people who who are going to review those outputs before they end up going to the customer. And I do think that that's where the technology feels like it is today, is where you want to have somebody looking at that and making sure that the accuracy, the data accuracy is there, and that you're able to, before it goes to a customer, have that level of judgment still at the human level. Not sure if, looking forward to seeing if that can get better, but already that's a massive improvement, because we can have somebody review the agentic AI and the RPA output, confirm, and get it out much faster. And so we can still reduce our costs and still have a wider scope, because someone can basically do a lot more of a lot more volume in an 8-hour shift than they were able to do before.
Great, that's incredible, Jake. I think you raise a good point about the intersection between RPA and agentic AI. So organizations that have invested quite significantly in RPA, this could be a way for them to extract additional value and reduce time to value in terms of transformations that are happening around the organization. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a ton of repeatable processes across our business that we're continuing to look at. We've seen a large amount of success. One of the things I brag about internally at Newfront is we actually were able to pivot into Lumini providing this service to us and didn't have to notify a lot of our stakeholders that it impacted, because the transition was so seamless. Lumini was a great partner to help us make that seamless, and the documents continued to flow. So this was a back office change that improved quality, improved speed, and we didn't even necessarily feel the need to broadly communicate it out. Of course, senior management people understood what we were doing, but as we went carrier by carrier and were confident, go through our testing period and then set it live, it was a matter of telling our agent in El Salvador, hey, you could stop pulling from this carrier site effective tomorrow, and then we turn on that Lumini workflow. The same output happens to our internal team, and our customers receive the same thing, and there was no disruption in service. So there was a big advantage to that as well.
Fantastic. A couple of questions have come in. So the first is, what was the biggest or largest gain in relation to the KPIs that you were trying to achieve? And then I'm going to sort of step into another question raised at the same time. In answering that, can you provide a quantifiable sort of level of saving or efficiency improvement that your team experienced?
We're looking at, I'll answer the second question first. We're looking at over 50% cost reduction from our manual implementation to using Lumini for this service. So that was alone worth it without any other KPI. The other KPIs I kind of mentioned already, but it was really around the quality, the reliability of knowing that we get every single document every day, because the system can be a lot more exact in making sure that it pulls every document. Candidly, even with offshore operations, if somebody is sick and somebody didn't come into work for a day, or somebody didn't log in, and for whatever reason, we still had those human problems, and we're tolerant of that. At the same time, it would, like I mentioned, it would cause delays, it would cause issues. So we've seen an increase in reliability. We get the documents flowing much faster through our system, and then the decrease in cost with over 50% cost reduction really made the decision a no-brainer. One thing to note is that there was an investment internally from us of making sure that we had to go through an extensive testing process internally. So we did have to put resources forward internally to make sure that we had operations managers looking at the output for a considerable amount of time to make sure that it was reliable enough. That was an internal investment, and I definitely had some of my junior operation managers saying, spending a lot of time on this and kind of pointing the back towards, hey, we're realizing a significant savings here. We're increasing reliability. It's worth your time to be spending on that. So that was our main KPI that allowed us to justify the move.
Fantastic. Jake, I'm going to ask you a lot more questions, I'm sure, but in the interest of trying to get back on schedule, I'm going to open the debate to all of the speakers here, if I can, to answer as many questions from our audience as possible, if that's okay. So I'm going to start again with you, Jake, but I'm going to open this out to the broader audience. Did you at Newfront and anyone else on the team, Lumini and also Hitachi, in relation to sustainability monitoring and tracking and the environmental impact of running these processes, was there any analysis done in relation to Newfront on that, Jake? And James and Vitor, I'm particularly looking at you in terms of monitoring the sustainability impacts of using this type of technology. Thanks for the question, by the way.
You know, in all honesty, when we started this journey, like I mentioned, it was before agentic AI was in our vocabulary, and it was before there was really an understanding of the energy usage of these tools and how they worked. So we've kind of been able to benefit from that as an add-on to the service that we worked hard to stand up. And you know, I wish I had a better answer, but candidly, we when we stood it up and then as it's evolved, we didn't really feel the need to do that at the time because the idea of RPA using a ton of energy wasn't and being sustainable versus not sustainable was not really at the forefront of our thought process at the time, to be perfectly candid with you.
No, thank you, Jack. I think that's fair enough. Varun, Vitor, James, do any of you want to come in answer to that question?
Yeah, I'll maybe chime in from a Lumini perspective of sort of how we think about this. So the way Lumini works is we sort of like I said, use an agent to build a policy, use an agent to write the code. But then in deployment, in real runtime, we're actually minimizing the use of any sort of model in real time until an exception is encountered. When an exception is encountered, we call upon the model to help us solve that problem. And we're not doing inference in real time every time you want to run one of our automations. And so that's one way we've been able to offset the sort of both the cost, but also, you know, the sustainability and environmental impacts of, you know, doing inference in real time for every action you're taking.
Excellent. Thanks, Varun. Vitor, James, I'll move on to the next question quickly, but either one of you want to touch on that?
Picking the right model at this moment could be a key factor, first of all. Then kind of optimizing the model architecture, everything that uses all of these components can be optimized. There are solutions that right now are focused on the sustainable part of it, of course. Cloud providers provide all of that capability in terms of our sustainable data practices that can be implemented as well. There are metrics that can be used, and bottom line, you can use your own agent to kind of go over and then try to understand if your current workflow, your current model is going to be optimized to be more efficient in terms of I don't know, saving energy or carbon aware. All of this can be built in. I think the biggest part was when we saw a couple of weeks ago launching new large language models that are more optimized, that use less resources. I think we're going to go into that part of the world, which is going to be good. A technology need to adapt. So we're doing progress on that.
Okay, super. I'm going to move on. James, if you have something quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. It's a whole session in itself, but fundamentally, we are in conjunction with another one of our technology partners talking to a large UK bank. We started off on an ethical AI conversation, which I know has come up a couple of times. But that ethics is very quickly spread into ethics and sustainability. And looking at how we can control that as best we can, where's the most appropriate way of solving particular problems, so that we're not running through lots of tokens, high cost in terms of pounds, dollars, what have you, but also high cost in terms of carbon. So looking at that add-on really to the ethics piece. In the interest of time, let's have a look at some of the questions. But anyone that's got a specific question, interest in that, please contact us separately and we'll follow it up.
Thank you, James. Question from Isabel. What is the risk to contextualization in the context of agentic AI? I hope it's easier to answer than to say. So I'm going to start with you, Vitor, if that's okay.
What do you mean? Contextualization in terms of because I don't understand quite well the question. So
yeah, because we can't get clarification for Isabel, what we can do is perhaps we can reach out to Isabel and find maybe if you want to have a stab at what you think of contextualization means. Otherwise, we'll move on and we'll loop back to Isabel if that's okay.
Well,
I have a good question for Varun. Varun, how does Lumini ensure that its results remain consistent even with minimal human oversight? For example, where a dependency has a change of location or a missing key field that was there previously?
Yeah, so I'll answer it in sort of two parts. The first is part of the reason we think it's really important to go from sort of plain language to a business policy and then business policy to sort of automation code is the business policy governs the automation, and that ensures we always do the same thing consistently over time. Now, the second way I'll answer that is there are certain changes in the automation that we self-heal, and there are certain automations that we intentionally have a feedback loop with our deployment teams and our customers. And I'll give you two simple examples. If a button's moved on a page slightly, the functionality still exists. You really expect a person, if they were doing their job, to say, yeah, the button moved a little bit over, like I should click it and continue. And that's how we approach it. Lumini solves for it in real time, self-heals, and the automation continues to run. There are then certain types of changes in a process where you really don't want, say, a frontline agent to take action. For example, in a process, there's a complete change in a particular form that needs to be submitted as part of a process. And there are new questions that expose certain data to a third party. In that scenario, you wouldn't trust sort of a frontline agent to sort of change their processes on the fly and start filling out this brand new form and sending out additional information out into the world. And so in that case, what happens is we have a feedback loop where the automation will inform our deployment teams that the automation broke at this step. This is why it broke. It's because these new fields in this form need to be answered. And then it's up to a deployment strategist to either work with our customer to say, hey, how do you want to update the business policy to factor in these new requirements? Or if they say, let's just move ahead, we automatically generate the code to self-heal the automation. And it's a click of a button for the deployment team to redeploy an update to the automation. And so we have sort of a feedback loop for those more business critical decisions, but even those can be readily deployed with a click of a button versus an engineer writing code to solve the problem.
Fantastic, comprehensive answer, Varun. Thank you so much. We have another question. Can we share the slides after the call? Absolutely. We will reach out and make sure that you have a copy of those. I also believe that we might be able to make some of the recording available as well. So we'll get onto that. Is there another question we can go into? I think we've already answered this, but one of the questions is they'd like to understand the approach in transitioning from existing RPA tools to agentic AI, how to deal with the legacy robots while in parallel using agentic. Varun, I think that's a good one for you. I think Jake actually touched on this a little bit, was saying it complements it in lots of ways. But did you want to add anything to that, Varun?
Yeah, I think most of our customers who use a legacy RPA platform are thinking about this in sort of a two-staged approach. The first stage is they find that sort of tools like Lumini are able to help them solve a new set of problems that they could not solve with RPA. And so the near-term opportunity that most of our customers see is, let me go solve these 30 other problems that I just thought I could never solve with RPA with Lumini, and value there. And so I think of sort of the shift towards agentic models allowing an increase in the TAM of the opportunity we're going after. Then I think some of our customers, once they've had success there, then start thinking about what do I do with my legacy RPA tool and automations, and do I need two systems, or should I consolidate everything to a single system? And that's where we're starting to build functionality that allows our customers to take their existing RPA bots and transition them to Lumini automations in a more seamless way versus sort of starting from scratch. That's on the roadmap, but we find the majority of our customers just find there's a ton of a new opportunity to go after before they revisit what they may have already built.
Varun, thanks so much. I'm conscious that we're actually on time. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, etc. If you'd like to hear more, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you'd like a dedicated discussion or even demonstration and to discuss your specific use cases, we'll be happy to do that with you. Hopefully you found this session informative. And for those questions that we weren't able to get to, we'll try and follow them up offline and share the feedback with all delegates and attendees. So thank you all for your time, and thank you to all of our speakers, Varun from Lumini, James from Hitachi Digital Services, Jake from Newfront, and Vitor from Hitachi Digital Services. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.